right, welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast presents BSP Sunday Morning Fantasy. Uh, Make sure you're following me on Twitter at rstern33. You see, I got the game going on in the background. It is fourth quarter now. Just an awful game. Both of these teams are so far away from being legitimate teams. Tua he just as I had said during the draft process, Tua Tagovailoa is not the answer. I just didn't think he was going to be a good NFL quarterback, and what do you know, he hasn't been so far. But so we have a great show coming up for you. Got some Vegas odds. Got studs, and sleepers for your fantasy football lineups. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section. We will answer them live on air. Should be getting, hopefully getting Andrew Fume from backsportspage.com also. Make sure you're following at backsportspage everywhere you go on social media. So what we'd like to do is open up with live with Vegas odds. Which ones are our favorites? I've been hot lately. My favorite this week is the Chargers on the money line. Right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook, they are sitting at plus 135. If I can get the Chargers right now at plus money, I'm going to hammer it all week. Last week, I was so heavy on the Bills on the money line, and that made up for the Patriots just laying an absolute egg. But yeah, my what I gave you last week on air was take the Bills at plus money anytime you can. So I was able to last week, and they hit out really well. So that's what I'm looking for right now this week with the Chargers sitting there at plus 135. Another line that I love this week is the Bengals. Right now, they are at minus 3.5 against the Lions. I got burned by the Bengals earlier in the year against Jacksonville. That's not going to happen this week against the Lions. I really think that the Bengals have one of the more underrated teams in the league. They're close. They've got a vastly improved defense this year. That doesn't mean they're a great defense, but they're improved from where they were last year, and they just have an emerging offense who's going to continue to get better as Joe Burrow gets healthier, as he grows more accustomed to the league. He's got 3 terrific targets. So I really think that this is a good week for the Bengals. So those are my 2 that I am playing as much as I can, as many units as I am willing to wager. All right, let's get into the fantasy portion of the show. Again, make sure if you have any lineup questions, leaving them in the comments. We'll answer them live on air. Let's get to studs, duds, and sleepers. So we've got the studs portion. Again, my co-host today, or my co-host normally, Marthony Sanders, unable to join us, dealing with a death in the family. Wishing you all the best, Marthony. Hope to get you back on sooner rather than later. Studs, quarterback, and this falls right in line with what I had said earlier. It's Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert right now is playing terrific football. He is, and a lot of it has to do with Mike Williams. Now, Mike Williams did not participate in practices this week, but he is expected to play. He is active in the lineup, so I'm I'm expecting Mike Williams to be out there and able to contribute. But we'll talk about another Chargers receiver in just a little bit. But Justin Herbert, he gives you enough of a base with a couple rushing yards every week. The ability to find Austin Eckler out of the backfield as a receiver. Justin Herbert is just about as safe a quarterback as there is right now. And we saw last week, this is not the same Ravens defense that we are all used to. This is a Ravens defense that just allowed 402 yards to Carson Wentz. So, give me Justin Herbert anywhere and everywhere that I can, especially in DFS, if I'm willing to spend up. My stud running back of the week is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor gets to play Houston this week. Absolutely love that matchup. We're starting to see him get the touches that he deserves to get, but I mean, it's still not enough. Jonathan Taylor is someone who deserves that bell cow work as much as he can. So we got Andrew. Welcome into the show, Andrew. How you doing? Oh, I can't hear you, Andrew. Oh. All right. So while Andrew tries to fix what he's got over there, I'm gonna move on to my wide receiver stud of the weekend. Like I said, with Justin Herbert as my stud quarterback of the week, I'm going Keenan Allen as my stud wide receiver of the week. We saw last week Michael Pittman was the guy.
This better?
We saw. There we go. All right.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. So I was going over my studs of the week, and stud wide receiver. I was going with Keenan Allen. I see a similarity between the way that the Chargers use Keenan Allen to the way that the Colts have been using Michael Pittman, and we just saw Pittman get target after target after target last week. I think we're going to see a similar game plan with Keenan Allen. Who do you like as one of your favorite wide receivers of the week?
Well, Michael Pittman was on my list this week. I came in just in time to hear you talk about Jonathan Taylor, and we saw, like you said, he needs to get that bell cow kind of workload. Last year we saw, unfortunately, I was a victim of one of those weeks where he had like 30 carries against the Titans and put up like 35 points. And once that happens this year, I think Jonathan Taylor will eventually be that running back one a lot of people drafted him to be. I do agree with you. Michael Pittman, I think, will be that guy this week. If Terry McLaurin can stay healthy and on the field this week, he's got a pretty good matchup against the Kansas City defense that's just hurting week in and week out, year in and year out. It's been a while since Kansas City's really had a defense that can put them in a position to win a championship ultimately, because even when they won against the 49ers, they had to do it on the back of Pat Mahomes and in a comeback fashion. So Terry McLaurin this week, love him against a really beat up and broken Kansas City defense.
I love that pick, and I almost decided to put McLaurin, but the injury sort of scared me off.
Yeah,
but the matchup is great, and in the sleepers portion of the show, we're going to talk a little bit more about the game and why I do like your Terry McLaurin pick. Another wide receiver stud that I love this week is Robert Woods. Finally, last week we saw him get the targets that we're used to seeing him get on a consistent week in, week out basis. And the Giants have been very vulnerable to teams' number 2 wide receivers this year. Adoree Jackson has not worked out so far for the Giants as that big money number 2 cornerback to play opposite of James Bradbury, who hasn't been great either. But Robert Woods is someone that I'm definitely looking to play, especially in DFS anywhere I can get him.
Yeah, I put him in a couple of daily lineups as well, just because it seems like, if it's not Cup, it's going to be Woods. And, the number 2 wide receiver is a very susceptible spot. I think it
Yep.
was Cooper, or was it CeeDee Lamb last week, is technically in that wide receiver spot.
Yeah.
Wide receiver 2 spot in Dallas.
It was whoever, because they move them around, but whoever Adoree Jackson was covering. And we saw one of the turning points of that game was at the end of the second quarter when it was still a 10-10 game.
Mm-hmm.
Adoree Jackson had an interception in the end zone in his hands that he just let go right through his hands. And the very next play, the Cowboys score a touchdown, go up 17-10, and the rest was history.
Yeah, I like this. The Giants and the Jets this year, I've been saying this with Randy Azalea from Back Sports Page as well. They're 5-quarter teams. They don't get going until midway through the third quarter, midway through the fourth quarter, and it's that garbage time when the game's kind of out of hand, but it's not out of hand, and you need to be relying on your defense when the defense has been in bend and don't break mode all game.
All year, both defenses all year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a shame because in the first half of most of their games, most of their defense, their both teams' defenses have been on the field just so much.
Yeah, it's really remarkable actually. Both defenses are actually doing surprisingly well for the amount of time that they're on the field. I mean, the Jets I believe are a top 10 or 12 fantasy defensive team, just because they don't have the takeaways to really back it up, but they are in a bend don't break type of mode.
So now we're going to go into the stud tight ends, and especially with DraftKings, and this is where you need to take advantage of pricing.
When
you have a team play on Monday Night Football, what happens that week doesn't get factored into next week's pricing because they have to. So DraftKings and FanDuel have to have their prices set for the next week before Monday Night Football because of the Monday-Thursday contests. So last week, we hadn't seen Mark Andrews get involved throughout the first 4 weeks of the season the way anyone was expecting. And then we finally got to see him involved this past week.
Absolutely detonated.
Over 40 FanDuel points, FanDuel and DraftKings points. Mark Andrews on DraftKings is only $5,200. He must be in every single one of your lineups.
He's a guy I put in like 2 or 3 of my daily lineups. He's against a Chargers defense that just had David Njoku absolutely destroy them for like 7 receptions, 2 touchdowns, and 80-something some odd yards. So it's like the matchup is there, the writing's on the wall, and I think this game is going to be a really, really high-scoring affair. I mean, Herbert and the Chargers, they can go down the field just as good as anybody in the NFL. And same thing with Lamar and the Ravens. They spread that ball out, and they can go up and down the field. It could be a track meet really quickly.
Yeah, so I know on the DraftKings Sportsbook, they do have a special this week for a no-risk single-game parlay. So it's a two-way bet. So my favorite one that I did this week was I took the Chargers on the money line and over 50 and a half points.
That's a pretty generous line for an over-under right there for two more of the high-scoring teams.
With those two as a parlay, it boosted the odds up to plus 390. I absolutely love playing those two, and it's a no risk bet for me. So I'm going to be playing it no matter what. So
it's a no brainer at that point.
Yeah. All right. So now we are moving on to the duds portion. This is the part where we're even if they're those guys that you have to plug into your season-long lineups, maybe we're steering away from on the DFS side. My dud of the week is Derek Carr, and not just because we've started to see him come back down to earth over the past week, but this was a very emotional week for the Raiders.
It really was draining.
With that whole John
That's
Gruden, who knows what to expect from the Raiders? It's not going to be like, oh well, let's go out and win one for
no. They're
what do
not
you
going
do?
out to win one for anybody.
Yeah, exactly, and and not to mention they're going up against a really good Denver Bronco defense.
Yeah, that's my defensive pick of the week too. I put them in a couple daily lineups just because they're like you said, Las Vegas is a very broken team at the moment, and Denver will feast on that, especially at home.
My two favorite defenses to play this week were the Broncos and the Bengals.
Yeah.
So, is there a quarterback that you necessarily are looking to steer away from this week? Or that someone you normally put in a DFS lineup and just haven't found yourself putting them in this week?
I will say, and I'm a Kyler Murray owner myself, be a little cautious of Kyler. Be a little cautious of Kyler Murray this week. He's going against a deceptively tough Cleveland Browns lineup. I mean, I know they just got gashed by the Chargers, but the Cleveland defense is deceptively good, and Kyler kind of showed a little cracks in the armor last week against a pretty vulnerable 49ers team. So I would say be cautious against Kyler this week in daily fantasy and in normal fantasy as well. I can't really fade him just because he's my quarterback. But Kyler Murray, and then, if you're kind of stuck, I would stay away from Ryan Tannehill as well. He's got a pretty unfavorable matchup against the Titans, but Tannehill really hasn't been that much of a fantasy guy this year anyway. Kyler Murray, Ryan Tannehill may not be the best two people this week.
So another reason why I was steering clear of, I mean, it sounded like he was a full go in practice on Friday, but he was dealing with a shoulder thing. The Cardinals are going to be without their starting center, Rocky Hudson, this week.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I think the interior pass rush, which we've seen a lot from the Browns this week. So, yeah, Kyler Murray was my number two guy. So, my let's see, a dud. So my dud running back of the week, and it's actually the same game, and part of the reason is because of the injury to Rocky Hudson, James Conner. So James Conner has been feasting on those 1-2 yard touchdowns. If we think that there's an issue with Kyler Murray, there's an issue with the offensive line, there may not be as many opportunities for James Conner to get those 1-2 yard touchdowns that have been making him a relevant play throughout this year so far.
And Kyler, in the beginning of the season, the first 3 weeks, he's been doing it himself in that that red zone area in between 5 yards and the goal line. He'll just take it himself on a bootleg, out to the pylon. And now we're starting to see James Conner starting to get those inside handoffs a bit. So James Conner, I really haven't. I don't really put him in my dud or stud category. He's just kind of wavering in this kind of middle zone. This week, I don't think he's going to be a dud. I just don't think he's going to produce as much people are hoping for. But Aaron Jones is one of those guys on my list. He's got a tough matchup against the Bears, and we're starting to see a little bit of a Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb 1-2 punch developing with him and A.J. Dillon a bit. Last week, it seemed a little bit more fluid. A.J. Dillon was getting very involved in the passing game, and that's been something that Aaron Jones has been feasting on. That's kind of his bread and butter spot, especially in PPR leagues. That's where he shines, and Dillon's kind of stepping in and taking a little bit out of that role. So he's eating from Jones's plate, and I just be a little cautious. He may not be that 20-yard floor guy, 20-point floor guy anymore. And he's losing some touches, and he might be losing some points. I don't think he'll be a dud, but we just need to remain a little cautious on him.
Yeah, so again, that's a perfect thing where Aaron Jones, you're going to play him in your season-long lineup, so
Yeah,
there's
you
no way
can't
you
not.
can sit him. But
Mhm.
he's someone that maybe I'm fading in DFS. I don't have him in any of my lineups this week.
Yeah, I
Chicago's
didn't as
defense,
well.
and early on in the year, it looked like that they were going to be susceptible, but they've played much better over the past couple weeks,
Mhm.
looking like a more traditional Bears defense. My dud wide receiver of the week is going to be Tyler Lockett. Uh, Russell Wilson is out for a couple weeks, and what we saw from Geno Smith when he got inserted into the lineup is that he's going to trust his big guy. He's going to
Mhm.
trust the guy that's going to be able to adjust to a ball, has a much wider catch radius with DK Metcalf. We saw the really nice touchdown pass that he threw to Metcalf, and we saw him overshoot Tyler Lockett a couple times. So, and this scares me as the owner of Tyler Lockett in a couple of my season long leagues.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for me to sit him, but
Mhm.
and I know it would only be in the lineups that include all day because they do play at night. But I'm going to be a little bit cautious with Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, Lockett's one of those guys like you said, you just can't really fade him. And last season he hurt me on the back end, on the back nine of fantasy football. It was just clearly it was a Lockett in the beginning, and then it turned into Metcalf. And going back to Geno's days as a starting quarterback of the Jets, he really, really liked throwing to Brandon Marshall a lot when he had him for a
Yep.
year.
Yep.
I mean, granted, he didn't have the best wide receivers. He had Stephen Hill, who was kind of like that big, tall receiver, and he favored him a lot. And I think, it's the Seahawks are with their wide receiver core. It's kind of volatile. It's either going to be a big Lockett game or a big Metcalf game,
Yeah.
and it's just a really tough situation. So, yeah, I agree with you. I do think Lockett's a good guy to fade. I'm going to throw my guy out right now to fade is have to be cautious on the Cowboys wide receivers a little bit. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, two extremely talented guys. I think actually this could be a really big week for Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz, the tight ends. The Patriots are a little susceptible to covering tight ends. And they do have a very respectable pair of cornerbacks. So I think that CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, you may not want to go all in on them, especially in daily if you're going to put your money into a stud wide receiver, and you can choose Cooper, you can flex Lamb. Let's just be a little cautious, especially going into New England. That's a tough place to play. Dallas wide receivers, Cooper, Lamb, they might have a tough week this week.
Yeah, and what we see from Belichick on a week in, week out basis is that he focuses on taking away a team's top option.
Exactly. He
And
will do that.
it's tough with this extremely balanced Dallas offense. Who do
Mm-hmm.
you view as the top option? Is it going to be Zeke? I don't think you can focus on Zeke, taking away Zeke, because if you do that, those that wide receiver core is just going to eat you up. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that you take away one of them and then just hope that your defensive front can manage Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is not this is good. The Cowboys are a scary team because of their balance.
A
They
lot of
have,
ways to beat you.
yeah, and it's been a different way. And in fact, it's actually been both ways. They've
Mm-hmm.
been able to establish the run early and then go to the pass late. They've also done it the opposite way. They've been able
Yeah.
to establish the pass early, open up that box, and then Zeke just hammers the
Gashes you.
rock in the second half. So
Mm-hmm.
that
And
the
what they're doing,
Dallas, yeah,
what they're doing with Tony Pollard too is that's
yeah,
fantastic. I mean, it may hurt some Zeke owners a little bit, but if you don't have Tony Pollard and you're a Ezekiel Elliott owner, you need to pick him up. But the way that they're doing this 1-2 punch, it's just like a Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
It's like an Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon situation. They understand the best way to make Zeke effective. They can't beat him 30 times a game because it's not longevity. They need to preserve him. So getting Pollard in there, especially on some passing plays, they're realizing that in the long run, that's going to help Zeke perform way better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to go to the dud tight end, and Marthony and I always laugh when we get to dud tight ends because it's so easy. Just throw a dart and you'll hit with
it's such
how
a volatile
random
position.
Yeah.
The drop off is so insane.
I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson, and this is somebody that I love. I love TJ Hawkinson, just not this week. The Cincinnati linebackers have been playing excellent football. TJ Hawkinson was limited all week in practice, and he is viewed by defenses as the number one target. So he's going to be double teamed, and we've started to see his targets go down and down and down every single week. And we're going to talk about someone who has benefited from the reduction of TJ Hawkinson's targets in just a little bit. But I just... And another reason, I still don't trust Jared Goff.
Yeah, he's really one of those guys. Like, I mean, if you can find him, like if you can squeeze him like cheaply in your daily lineup, he can win you a league. He can win you a week. But the inconsistency is just mind-boggling sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy who took the Rams to the Super Bowl, had one of the best, resurrected the greatest show on turf that year, and then in the Super Bowl, in the biggest game of his career, he just kind of fell flat on his face, and it seemed like he never really recovered from that.
Right.
And I'm a Hawkinson owner myself, and the first 2 weeks of the season, I actually had Hawk and I had Gronk, and I was like, "What am I gonna do?" And now, I don't even have an option.
Right.
Really, I just have to play Hawkinson.
You have to play Hawk, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird because TJ Hawkinson was one of my favorite wide receivers during draft season, but he was always going in a spot where I was uncomfortable taking him.
Yeah.
He was always going in that area where I was looking for a wide receiver 2, a running back 3. I was either going to be one of the first to draft a tight end or one of the last to draft a tight end.
Yeah.
I either have Kelsey or Waller, or I'm playing the streaming game.
Yeah.
And with my tight ends.
And you know what? This year, if you waited, you may have been smart enough to kind of pick up Dawson Knox late in the draft, or you grabbed him in the waiver wise. If you grabbed him at all, you're probably going to win a championship, I think, just because, Buffalo, I don't know what it is, Josh Allen and him, they got something going. They really seem to be incorporating the tight end, and he just looks like a wide receiver too out there. He doesn't even look like a tight end. He's fast. He's aggressive on the ball, and he's got great hands.
So I actually have in my dynasty league, I have the Josh Allen, Dawson Knox stack. So
very nice.
It's been very helpful, and it's fine because the rest of my team is in a rebuild. My top 3 running backs are all on IR for the season.
Oh,
I have Cam Akers. Yeah, Cam Akers. Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, and Raheem Mostert. So
yeah, Mostert. There's really something weird happening in San Francisco. I've been reading so many reports. Like, their strength and conditioning coach, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like no one can really stay healthy there.
And it's not just been this year. This has been going on for. I know last year they were just absolutely riddled.
The past 3 seasons, they've been getting decimated.
It's unreal what we've seen out of Tampa. All right, now we jump into my favorite portion of the week. And again, for anyone tuning in, if you have any lineup questions, whether it's DFS or your season-long lineups, leave them in the comments, and we will answer them live on air. We've been getting some great questions over the past couple weeks, so make sure you are leaving them in the comments section. Sleeper quarterbacks of the week. So I've actually got 2. My first one is going to be Taylor Heinecke.
Yep. Bad defense.
That Chiefs defense, they're riddled with injuries, and they're just getting beat up every single week. We saw Josh Allen just have his absolute way with them. He did whatever he wanted to do last week. And I see a little bit of, obviously, he doesn't have the arm, but he has the no fear mentality that Josh Allen has.
He's a gunslinger.
And which is very different for a backup quarterback. Usually when you have a backup quarterback, they're more reserved. They're taking the checkdowns, willing to just hand the ball off more often. He wants to throw the ball around the field. And if you're getting that matchup against Kansas City, I think, especially in DFS, he can save you a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good sleeper. I have two sleepers as well. My first one, he may not even be a sleeper at this point. He seems to have kind of arrived in the NFL, but Joe Burrow against Detroit this week.
Yeah, I love him.
He's such a gamer. I really appreciate the effort that he puts in. I mean, Aaron Rodgers last week at the end of the game, he's like Joe, slide, man. You got a lot going for you. But the Detroit defense, for what it's worth, they kind of held Lamar Jackson in check. So they're not an easy matchup, but they're not a tough matchup. But I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense just seem to be clicking on all cylinders right now. They have Joe Mixon coming back. T. Higgins is a reliable guy in the slot. The Rappaport him and Jamar Chase have, and then CJ Uzomah, another little sleeper tight end for you right there.
Absolutely.
Uzomah's a big guy. He's very reliable in those third and long situations. He's a safety net for Burrow, and I think they really can move the ball up and down the field, and they take a lot of time off the clock doing it. It's very surgical, and it can end in a Jamar Chase 50-yard bomb, or it can end in a Joe Mixon 2-yard run. So I like Joe Burrow a lot against the Lions defense this week.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is in at least half of my DFS lineups this week.
Yeah.
My other sleeper quarterback is Mac Jones. Look at what we saw last week. Even Mike Glennon was able to put up points against the Cowboys. Again, it didn't result in a lot of NFL points, but it resulted in a lot of yards for Kadarius Toney. And those, they're starting to go back to that two tight end system that worked so many years for the Patriots. Hunter Henry is becoming that reliable target that I think we've been waiting for quite some time. Jonnu's finally getting involved, especially in the red zone.
Yep.
And Jacoby Myers is one of the safest wide receivers in the NFL right now. And I think we can I'm not expecting 189 yards from Jacoby Myers like we saw from Kadarius Toney last week. But Jacoby Myers can easily have an 8 for 102 and a touchdown. But Mac Jones, I think, is going to be the benefit. And we've seen the Patriots run game just hit the absolute crapper. So they're gonna need to rely on him, because I can see the Cowboys putting up points early and the Patriots having to play from behind.
I snuck Jacoby Myers and Hunter Henry in a few of my dailies as well, just because, I mean, like you said, Jacoby's a really safe guy, especially in PPR leagues.
Yep.
He's getting the receptions, and Hunter Henry now seems to be that big red zone tight end for Mac Jones. Sleeper quarterback number 2, Baker Mayfield. I mean, he hasn't been the best fantasy quarterback, but he's another guy that's kind of arrived. I mean, after last year, we saw what the Cleveland Browns offense is, and it's a run first game. And Baker, he just has to not do anything to kill the team, and he seems to understand that, and he knows how to spread the ball around and get it to who's open. He's got a massive arm, and this week he's without Nick Chubb, and he's going to be relying a lot on Kareem Hunt. He could be one of those guys. Kareem Hunt could also have himself a huge day just coming out of the backfield and catching receptions in the flat. But he's against the Chargers this week. Or no, he's not against the Chargers this week. Excuse me. He's against Arizona this week. Yeah, another game that could turn into a track meet really quick.
Yep.
I like Baker Mayfield. Ricky Seals-Jones is David Njoku's back in the lineup this week. And Odell Beckham is back this week. So, I mean, Odell had a bit of a slow start last week. I think that Rappaport is just it maybe just needs time to build. But Odell, I like Baker. I like the Browns this week. I think he can be one of those QBs. You can get him really cheap on daily. Yeah. I think he's maybe around 6,900. And he could win you a week this week.
It's crazy to think that the Browns put up that many points last week and Beckham was 2 for 20.
Yeah, and I put him in a daily lineup and because he was pretty cheap last week as well. And I was like, this game could get out of hand fast. And I saw the score of the game, didn't read the stat line at all. And I was like, okay, Odell has to have done something productive, but nope.
So we're going to move on to sleeper running backs. And I've got two that I have in at least one of them in every single one of my lineups.
Mm-hmm.
I got Khalil Herbert.
Yep.
He's the only game in town for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad matchup against Green Bay's defense, but like I said, he's the only one there. David Montgomery on IR, Damian Williams on the COVID list.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw him fill in last week and look productive.
He had 18 touches.
I elevated him in my dynasty league where I'm decimated at running back. I had drafted him in the 4th round of the rookie draft this past season, and I elevated him from the taxi squad onto my starting lineup this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can be very safe this week, and I also a really deep sleeper for DFS lineups. If you want to spend all the way down, Demetric Felton. We were talking about that Browns Cardinals game. Demetric Felton is the scat back for the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
No Nick Chubb this week, and we've seen Felton even when Hunt and Chubb have been there. He's gotten at least 2 receptions every game so far this year. He's found the end zone twice. I think we see 5 to 10 touches from him out of the backfield. And then if you're playing on DraftKings, he's the bare minimum, and you can get PPR points for dirt cheap.
Yeah, Herbert's one of those guys in my in one of my leagues. I'm not sure where to go. I have Devontae Booker and I have picked up Khalil Herbert as well this week. And I'm kind of in this area. Do I flex Herbert? Do I play Booker? I'm still undecided.
Yeah, it's well, you have a couple minutes.
Yeah, right. I actually just looked at the clock and I was like, all right, well, okay.
Yeah, to me, Herbert would be the safer route.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to play. It's tough to play a backup running back against the Rams when your offensive line is the Giants' offensive line trying to stop Aaron Donald. So, I think Herbert's the safer play. All right, quickly let's run down before the clock strikes 1. My sleeper wide receiver is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out a way to pick him up in my league, but there's too many. I don't know. I can't find a way to squeeze him on my team without dropping someone else. But I think, like you said, Hawkinson's getting a lot of the attention.
So we saw 2 weeks ago, Amon-Ra St. Brown tied for the team lead in targets. Last week, he led the team in targets. This is another one. I think the Bengals can put up points early, which means the Lions could be playing from behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can easily see 7 to 9 targets go St. Brown's way this week. And I think another way to get cheap points into your lineup.
Yeah, this week as well. We have the return of T.Y. Hilton coming back. I don't expect him, to make a huge splash. I think he'll probably be limited on snap count. But that's someone else, if he's available in your league, he actually just got picked up. And
he's a good stash. Not someone I'm probably confident in playing this week.
No.
But definitely someone I would be picking up. So I actually had picked him up while he was still IR eligible, and I didn't need to make another move. So I was still able to stash him on the IR, which I'll be able to do until Tuesday when I need to make a move. But it'll be a just in case, because he is always capable of going 5 for 125 and 2. That's just the kind of player he can be. And my sleeper tight end is Jared Cook. Jared Cook is only at 3,200 on DraftKings. He's becoming a reliable red zone target. And if Mike Williams is limited at all during this game, I think we can see Jared Cook being the number 2 target or number 3 behind Austin Eckler.
Yeah, this my sleeper tight end can either blow up in a good way or blow up in a bad way, but the Giants really are not a good team at guarding the tight end. Tyler Higbee this week playing the Giants defense, the writing's on the wall right there. He's either going to give you 5 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown or 2, or, probably 2 receptions for 12 yards. So,
all right. So that is going.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is going to do it for us this week. Hope everyone, wishing everyone the best of luck in their fantasy lineups this week. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you give a plug for any of your spots that you got up on Backsports page?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. First of all, Ryan, appreciate it. So if you're a professional wrestling fan, I recommend checking out the Cut Pro Wrestling podcast with Randy Zelia. I do a lot of the editing. I do a lot of producing. We get a lot of great interviews. We just had a phenomenal interview with Devon Dudley that was just picked up by a ton of news outlets talking about why. Yeah, there you go. Him and Bubba Ray no longer work together. It's a great interview. A lot of insight into the world of professional wrestling. We have interviews with Marty Jones, with Ken Shamrock. We've just had a phenomenal indie talent called the Phoenix Kid, who's based out of Colorado. We've had other phenomenal indie guys like Mike Law on the show, Rhett Titus. I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta run through a lot of names right now. But if you're a fan of professional wrestling, looking for a little bit more insight into the industry and into how the independent scene works a little bit, I definitely recommend checking out the show.
Awesome. Again, thank you for joining us, and hopefully this can be a regular thing. We'll talk. All right.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan.
All right. Be well. Good luck, everyone. And
take care, everybody.
Again, make sure you are clicking subscribe on YouTube so you can get those notifications of when we are going live. All right. Have a great week, everyone.